Welcome and good morning to the meeting of the CVTA Finance Committee on December the 13th, 2023. It is with trepidation that I have agreed to chair for this meeting as vice chair due to the passing of our beloved Patricia Page. I would like to open the meeting up with a moment of silence in honor of her, and then later on in the meeting, if there are any points of reflection that any of the members would like to take, we'll have an opportunity for that. Please join me in a moment of silence. You'll be missed, Patricia. Certification of the quorum, please.
Chesterfield County Vice Chair Carroll.
Aye, here.
Henrico County, Mr. Thornton.
Present.
Powhatan County, Mr. Byerly. City of Richmond, Mayor Stoney.
Here.
Commonwealth Transportation Board, Mr. Davis.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I don't believe we've had any requests for remote viewing.
No, we have not.
We have not, so we don't need to go through that process. So everybody had an opportunity to look at the agenda, and if so, is there any considerations for amendments to the agenda? Not seeing none brought forward, we'll consider the agenda to be accepted. Do I have a motion? First of all, let me ask you this question. Has everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes from the November 15th, 2023 Finance Committee? And if so, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Motion's made to approve the minutes and properly seconded. Not seeing any discussion on the motion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carried. It's the point of the meeting where we would open it up for open public comment. That gives members of the community an opportunity to come before the CVTA Finance Committee and express any points of interest that they may have. I don't know that we have anybody online. And is there anybody in the audience today who would like to speak before the CVTA Finance Committee? Not seeing anybody coming forward and not seeing anybody online, I'm going to close the public comment period. And now it's back before us for the Finance Committee report. And I think I'm probably going to defer to Chet. Do you have anything that we need to report on this morning? We did not have an opportunity ahead of time to confer.
I do not.
Okay, that is a very short chairperson's report. This is the kind of report that we don't often get, but it is the last meeting of the year for the holidays, so it may be the reason why it's so succinct. Moving forward to, I think, number 6 on our agenda, CVTA Finance Committee membership. We have a discussion before us today that I think would be beneficial for us, and then just move forward to the full committee after the first of the year on the direction that we need to go to fill essentially the two seats at large for the Finance Committee. We know that we had Ms. Page from New Kent and Mr. Byerly from Powhatan. We know that Mr. Byerly is not returning to the Powhatan Board of Supervisors, and so I wanted to bring that up for discussion today, get thoughts on the committee members. If we looked at the procedure that we had put in place before, I think the next two in an alphabetical order of the other jurisdictions that are not represented, Henrico, Chesterfield, and Richmond, I think it was Ashland and Charles City County. But gentlemen, I'm open to your thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, I was gonna inquire with Chet about, what is there any recommendation from staff on this front?
Yes, sir, thank you. So I think I've discussed this with Mr. Gregory, and I think we have two points of action that need to take place. So just procedurally, the full authority would take action to name individually the two replacement members for Ms. Page and Mr. Byerly at its next meeting. A recommendation that could be to move forward alphabetically with the next two jurisdictions in line out of the 5, which will be Ashland and Charles City. I think that's prudent to establish that kind of process. Once the two additional members are named by the full authority, then that will come back to the Finance Committee at a subsequent meeting to actually hold elections again, to name the 2 officers for the Finance Committee itself, which is a Finance Committee action, as you all know. So I think that Mr. Gregory, I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but we have an opportunity to think about January, which will be the next full authority meeting. There doesn't need to be any action today by the Finance Committee. It's just a discussion about preference and comfort level and what you all feel is the right direction to move.
Mr. Thornton, any thoughts?
Oh, I concur.
I mean, I do think it gives staff at least an opportunity between now and the next meeting to reach out. Even if we send a survey memo out or a survey question or just an informational point of view to the membership to say, look, this is going to be a point of discussion coming up at the next CVTA meeting. This is what the Finance Committee discussed, and be prepared to have a discussion about it at the next meeting that you, Mr. Chair, will chair.
I support the recommendation. We start with the authority in January.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, one other thought.
Yes, sir.
If the authority decided to go with Ashland and Charles City, I think that we have established members that have experience with the CVTA. I think that's always a good thing with the Finance Committee membership to have from those 2 jurisdictions. So that will be a sound choice for the authority to consider when it comes back together.
Mr. Parsons, I assume that we should also expect that the different bodies throughout the jurisdictional footprint will likely be making their own decisions about who will be members of. So although Mr. Atkins and Vice Chair Hodges also serve as members today, there's potential.
That they might not be reappointed. Yep.
That's correct.
Based on the code, it's either the chair of the organization or a designee, and it very well could be that either one of those could change, as well as any other, quite frankly, designee on we know that Henrico is going to change because unfortunately Mr. Thornton is retiring. So.
Okay.
The only thing I would add, Mr. Chairman, to supplement Mr. Parsons' comments was the guidance document that you all previously adopted, just to remind you of the alphabetical, the preference for alphabetical rotation among the smaller jurisdictions for those 2 at-large members. So that's consistent with what Mr. Parsons said. I just wanted to remind you that you had a guidance document to that effect.
And I think it would be healthy to resend that guidance document out to all of the membership as we head into the next meeting, just as a reminder.
Non-binding, but certainly provide some guidance.
And I appreciate Mr. Parsons' comments, Mr. Chairman, in adherence to the guiding documents.
Yep. All right. If there's no other further discussion on that,
Does Mr. Davis does he have anything to add?
That's true. Yeah.
I appreciate the comments and the dialogue. I'm still getting up to speed, but alphabetical by locality, that makes perfect sense to me. I would appreciate the guidance document. That would be good for my own application.
Mr. Parsons and Ms. Firestone will be circulating that immediately, shortly after this meeting, I believe.
I'm hoping that you've been provided with most of the document, certainly some of these already, but if there's anything that you have an inquiry about whatsoever that you have not gotten, then just let us know and we'll make sure we get it to you. I'm sure you have the original legislation and bylaws and that kind of stuff, but there may be something else out there that we passed that may be helpful as well.
I appreciate that, and Chet's been very responsive. We talk pretty regularly.
Good.
Not frequent. I wouldn't call it frequently, but pretty regularly. So he's been great at getting information. So thank you.
It means more than occasionally. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Thornton.
I don't know whether we ever talked about this or not, but just as a thought, as the CVTA is continuing to grow and to mature, in its wisdom, maybe some of the commissioners might want to think about, and you might want to consider, this committee has some awesome responsibilities. So I'm wondering, maybe, would it be efficacious in the future to have some type of orientation for people coming in? Because it can be kind of awesome coming into a group like this. I don't think we've ever talked about that before, but there's something that maybe the future might want to think about.
It's actually a great idea, as usual. I have a question for legal counsel.
Sir.
So if we have, from a quorum point of view, not necessarily a quorum, but an official meeting point of view, so if we had, for example, 3 new members come on board from smaller jurisdictions that wanted to have an orientation that could be put on by staff, and perhaps either the chair or vice chair could attend the orientation as part of that, would that have to be advertised as an official meeting based on the amount of people in that? Or is that something that they could do as a closed session because it's a training issue or an orientation issue?
Good question. I don't think it would be advisable to consider it a personnel matter as training, as you suggest. It is rather cumbersome to have it as a public meeting. It wouldn't be conducting the business of the authority per se, but I'd like to think about that. That's an issue that comes up from time to time in various jurisdictions. I'd like to say that it wouldn't have to be a public meeting of the authority. But as you know, if you have more than 3 or more members of the public body, it could be construed as a meeting. And the guidance from the Supreme Court of Virginia is not exactly clear on that.
Surprise.
So let me think about that and confer with staff and provide some.
I think that would be
more precise guidance.
number one, a great suggestion. And then number 2, I think it's a good homework assignment for staff. And the least case scenario is that we could do a briefing with 2 people with staff and just set them up at different times and dates as an option for incoming members if they would like to come and actually have that information.
That, just to avoid the issue entirely, that would be my recommendation. And as difficult as scheduling is, that's probably the best you're gonna be able to do, practically speaking.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. The man who's gonna get tasked doing it, so go ahead.
I don't want to put her on the spot, but training is being planned.
Okay,
And
good enough.
Ms. Scott is working on that, and can you say anything about what the plans are?
Yes, we are hoping by January to have our new SharePoint site up for all boards and committees, so that everyone will have access to not only the CVTA bylaws and policies and onboarding documents, but also the commission and the policy board. So there'll be a SharePoint page with access to all 3 of the organizations and its committees. And we are planning orientations. What we were thinking about doing for the authority would be to have it as something that was added onto a meeting so that current members could stay, maybe at the end of the meeting, current members could stay, but certainly new members would be, we're gonna have new members on quite a few on all 3 of our boards. So we thought we'd have it as part of a meeting. Anyone who wanted to stay could, the new members certainly, and we could also do that for the finance committee. Sort of just give an overview at the end of a meeting, and new members stay, current members if they wish. If that, rather than bringing people in individually and.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yep.
that would make complete sense and be very practical for
I think
me.
so
That
too.
way, you already have a scheduled meeting, you're just sort of extending it, so that would avoid the issue as
That
well.
works for me.
Yeah.
I think that at least at the onsite, once we know who the new members are gonna be, I think staff, the one thing they should do is make sure that we forward to those localities, just as a reminder, the bylaws, all of the founding documents, the code, so that at least on an incoming, they'll have an opportunity to review all of that before the first meeting. So once we find out who their designee is, I think we should at least make sure they're provided with that information as to make it easier for them. Great suggestion, Mr. Gordon.
Mr. Parsons, I got a real quick question. Normally, when we're talking about these different jurisdictions who make their selections, I guess, assuming it's the chair or the president of their council or whatnot, do they notify you in a letter form? How does that happen?
Yes, I think typically we've accepted an email, but we'll get an official notification in January sometime.
Got it, okay.
About who the appointees are.
Okay,
I at least know Chesterfield, we send a letter directly here, letting them know who our designee is gonna be, so. All right, very good. Great discussion, as usual. Moving forward to the activities report.
Yes,
Parsons.
thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The investment report is the same one that the full authority saw on December 1st. That's page 8, October 2023. So I don't have any updates on the investment report, but we do have an updated tax collections and allocations report on page 7, which shows activity through the August tax period. Again, everything is tracking well. There is a little fluctuation up and down, but a fairly steady line for both sales and use tax as well as the local fuels tax. That actually seems to be rising some over the past few months. And this is, as you all know, this is directly related to our informal ratings review that we are eagerly anticipating because of the nature of bond issuance. We're tracking the revenues and how reliable they are as we consider as an authority the possibility of issuance of bonds in the next year. So I'd be happy to take any questions. I don't think there's anything notable to highlight here, unless anyone has any particular thoughts.
Well, looking at the total local distributions on the LTD, it's the lifetime to date, is that right?
Yes, sir.
I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That since the CVTA was created, we've actually put forth with taxpayer dollars to the communities to work on transportation over $300 million. And that is, I know, made a big impact in the ability for regional transportation to be addressed in a much quicker manner than ever before. And given our localities the opportunity to be more competitive in the smart scale process. And I do think it's important, because sometimes, as Mr. Thornton said, we don't toot our own horn enough. And the horn that I'm tooting here is the taxpayer horn, because they're the ones who've actually been paying these taxes.
you're getting the ROI.
And they are getting a tremendous return on their investment. If you just look at even some of which have been submitted, to this committee as the results of what each jurisdiction is using it for, the type of projects that have been addressed that sat dormant for a long time because they didn't actually have the money to do it. So appreciate this report every time I see it, strictly because I think it's important for us to let the taxpayers know, look, yes, this is your money, and yes, we are actually spending it in the best way possible to make your life better as you travel throughout Central Virginia. So very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I think one note, and Ms. Clark may cover this as well, but in terms of the next round of regional funding, this body will be asked to review and comment over the next few months on the round 3 regional project selections.
Okay.
We expect to have, as the authority on December 1st, approved a public hearing for its February meeting, which I believe is the 23rd. So leading into that, we will publish and put out for public review during a 15-day public review period, the draft allocations plan with the projects to be considered. So there will be an opportunity by the Finance Committee to take a look at that and provide any feedback to staff as well.
Okay. Any comment on that? All right, moving forward. I'm going to ask our TAC chair to come forward with their usual wonderful report.
I'm like, I don't know about today.
I mean, every time you come forward with great information, every time.
Awesome. Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr. Chair and members of the authority. Diana Moore Clark here, TAC Chair, City of Richmond. Today, we did not have an additional TAC meeting before this meeting. Our last meeting was, I believe, November 13th or so, and I did update this body as well as the full authority on that. And again, that did briefly touch on the regional funding, round 3. TAC, I guess today we have just some points of clarity and maybe would be helpful for the board. In the regional round 3 project selection, which Chet just spoke about, and then reviewing that draft, it's really going to be a decision potentially recommended by this body in whether or not we fund round 3 as pay-go and a complete funding round, and whether or not we amend, we've been doing the wish list process, and then those additional large projects that would potentially be for bonding, will that be aligned with the next round of the CVTA funding, which would be a year, right? A year and a half from now? Or would that be like an amended or some other funding? So I did want to kind of bring that up to have the you members of the Finance Committee consider whether or not we will complete the round 3 with the available funding as recommended by the Executive Director to this body, and or how that consideration for any special funding that could be a hybrid or bonding, how we would do that. So I do want to put that in the forefront to see, maybe we want to get an idea of will we go through this round 3 as is, or will we and amend it in some non-cycle moment, or will we move this whole bonding, as it'll be on your agenda later today? How TAC is to move forward with that process. Second, the RRTPO, which TAC, CVTA TAC and the RRTPO sometimes mostly mirrors each other. And the RRTPO did hold a public transportation working group. I don't know if all of you are familiar with that group, but it was developed, born of the RRTPO, in order to help guide GRTC with its transit strategic plan. And that transit strategic plan is what GRTC pulls out as excerpts to this body and saying, this is what we're going to do with the CVTA regional funding. So with that, during the public transportation working group, our rules, they are moving forward with really saying what type of public transportation works for us, and through potentially a study that the TPO will lead, will help to really answer some of those solutions and can potentially feed into that transit strategic plan that you will be reviewing for the annual spending of GRTC's CVTA dollars. So I did want to bring that crosswire to the table only because these things are happening and you all will be looked at potentially for funding dollars, and you should be aware of the planning efforts that are going into to ensure that we really do get solutions for both the urban and rural localities that participate in the CVTA. So that's exciting. And then finally, more to our money group, the Fall Line Trail Working Group. We are steadily moving forward with our wayfinding plan. It's really exciting and really neat how we will brand the Fall Line Trail throughout the region, but there is a gap in funding to implement this across the region. So I am talking to, again, the Finance Committee in hopes that whether it's as minimal as a letter of support from this group to apply for additional grants, federal or state grants to actually implement it, or there's potentially some seed or some money that can help the localities implement displaying what the Fall Line Trail means to each of the localities as people traverse through it. So we think that that's very important, that those things are there, because those are going to be the economic development drivers that, for example, the wayfinding, we solicited all the restaurants and all the attractions that can be placed along the trailhead so that people can be directed to go into the localities and go into the different places. So to really use it as an economic driver. And we know that this wayfinding is a key to that. And we just wanted to keep that on the forefront of your mind as well. Again, we are seeking our additional money other places, but we may lean to our friends at some point here at the Finance Committee. With that, that concludes my report. Thank you. Any questions?
Don't run away.
Yes,
Might
sir.
have a question or two. Members, any questions? I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Maybe staff can answer this. I know that we allocated some funding from the CVTA for wayfinding. How much was that? Do you remember?
I think it was maybe about, I think 60,000 or 70 or less than 70,000, and that is for this plan that we're doing right now.
And what do we think the number will look like that you're gonna need to be able to accomplish the mission?
Maybe I can go to Todd. Do you want to estimate? Have you seen, Henrico is the first group, of course, that's ready for it. So we do see that it may not be a need for everybody at the same time.
Right.
But
So are we talking about the CVTA paying for the signs that are actually gonna go along the, and all the information and all of that? Is that what we're talking about?
yes, sir.
Okay. All right, well, I guess there were a question we will definitely need to know in the future is what that number could possibly look like. So we can have a discussion within, not just Finance Committee, but within our own jurisdictions to say, you know, are we going to put this completely on the CVTA to fund? Or could we use some of our regional dollars that we're getting to fund that as well? And so we just need to look at, or even meet half and half, just a way to kind of look at
Matching,
it.
yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I assume there's because of the mileage within every locality, there's a different cost.
It could be a different cost, yeah.
That's right. So, that should be considered as well.
I concur. Meets the Chester will pay more, but I'm okay with that. We have a lot of mileage in our district. Mr. Parsons.
Yes, just a little bit more clarity on the wayfinding plan and what we're gonna get out of it. It's being developed as, I don't think template is the right word, but it's being developed with specifications. So that each jurisdiction can then go to a fabricator. It does not choose our fabricators for us, but we will have recommendations as part of the plan on who to use based on experience and reviews and everything else. And then that fabricator would help develop the price and the total cost. So as the mayor mentioned, it's gonna change depending on the jurisdiction. But we can certainly, I mean, our hope is that by the time we get to the end of the plan development, we'll have everything we need to know in order to come back to the Finance Committee and the full authority with some cost numbers.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench at everything because I do think that it's not just about signs. So there is an opportunity too for us to, quite frankly, we should be talking with our local chambers and the businesses along the route to find out what, if any, interest they may have in contributing to any type of advertising. Because right now, we're basically saying we're gonna give free advertising for a specific business or a specific point of interest, whether it be Henricus or something else in some historical location in the city, or Henrico, or Ashland for that matter. But part of what we're also trying to do is drive economic for each one of our jurisdictions to direct people to say, look, we have this great restaurant here. Well, I'll use an example, just one in Chesterfield. I won't even say which one I'm thinking of because I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to give personal preference to one or the other. But there may be businesses within our own community say, hey, look, I want to have a piece of that. I want to actually, if I can contribute to get a QR code from my company on there, or whatever it might be. And so we just gotta figure out from the wayfinding plan, is it really gonna be just about, visit Henricus or visit something here? Or is it gonna be also about, if you need to stay at a hotel, we have this great hotel right on the fall line, or in Richmond or in Chesterfield. But it's not our job to advertise for that hotel. We certainly create the opportunity, but if they want to participate, then they need to be given an opportunity to come forward and say, we want to participate in some way, how can we do it? And because you may actually find out that they do want to participate. Have we addressed that at all?
Well, thank you for that question. I think one of the things is too, which is also a question whether or not the standing up of some type of entity to manage the Fall Line Trail.
Yep.
I do think that the advertising will have different impacts. I know in the city, there's like franchise agreements just to advertise. And so that, I think a person that's in charge of the trail and the administration kind of maybe is something else we want to begin to look at, because navigating each of those things for each of the localities, I think, is something that that person could do in order to really say, how do we, not only for the paying for the of just the wayfinding, but also the maintenance in some cases. So I do think it is, you bring up a great point for us to start to think about how we're going to stand up a group. And we have some interested groups, but we don't know the logistics of how it may work. And maybe that's something that we could begin to work on in TAC, or the Fall Line Working Group, to begin to say, what are some of the next steps on administering and maintaining the Fall Line Trail from a central point, whether that's, again, a sports backer or whether that's another entity. We have had those conversations, but I do think we need to pick back up now that we're actually seeing things that they could help us with. And fundraising, of course, is another good thing that they're good for.
Well, because I do think that, yes, the CVTA has certainly taken point to bring this out of the ground with the money that we put forward and the CTB has put forward, $42 million from CTB that Mr. Brown was, the representative, was helped directing that. And then certainly we know we need to work with the state for additional funding, but it's not gonna be our job to operate it or to maintain it. And it could fall on each locality to do what they wanna do, or we could get someone who come in and that all the localities could agree on and be the point organization, whatever that turns out. But as we're working with the Wayfinder project, I think that's gonna lead into much bigger opportunities. That's why I brought it up.
Thank you.
I don't want to speak for Chair Clark, but I think the TAC would welcome any guidance on how the authority would like that discussion to take place. I think we've been kind of talking about it from time to time, but there hasn't been any organized discussion about management, and it's gonna be a big deal.
Well, I guess the big question is it the CVTA's authority to even come up with that, right? So it may not be within our scope of an authority to even determine who's actually gonna be in that position. So that is something that was, I don't even know we even discussed it when we actually talked about financing the project. So we may not even have the authority to even say, we're gonna choose X, Y, and Z to do it. So Mr. Gregory, we'll give you a homework assignment.
I'm already thinking about it.
Because, it's nice for us to have these conversations, and certainly nice if we're gonna help fund the Wayfinder program and actually help design what we think would be part of that. But in the long term, it's not our responsibility to take care of this in the long term as an organization. It doesn't belong to us. And so we need to figure out how that's gonna happen.
My assumption is that the capital trail would essentially is a template for us to, I don't know how that worked, from Richmond to Williamsburg, but I'm sure there are a number of agreements that are on file that we can learn from.
So I think in the end, VDOT, who's doing the projects, will end up having some say, I think the state will have some say in the long-term management of this. Especially if we continue to get state dollars in that. So it certainly doesn't mean we can't help take the lead to steer it in the right direction, but I don't necessarily know that we have the authority to be the one to say and pick somebody. We need to kind of figure that out.
Yes.
See, great report, as usual. spurred great discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next order of business, we are going to go into closed session, and the requested action is for a motion to convene closed session pursuant to Freedom of Information Act. The motion would be, I move that the Finance Committee convene in closed session pursuant to Virginia Freedom of Information Act 2.2, 3711A, subsection 29, for the purpose of discussing the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public fund and discussion of terms of scope of such contract for special bond counsel for the CVTA, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and which requires discussion and consultation with legal counsel pursuant to subsection 2.2-3711A, subsection 8, during which all recording of the meeting will cease. Do I have a second for that motion?
So,
I have a second on the motion.
Second.
All right, great. There is a motion before us that we go into closed session pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act 2.2, 3711A29, for the purpose of discussing the award of the public contract involving the expenditure of public funds and discussion of the terms and scope of such contract for special bond counsel for the CVTA, where discussion, again, as we said, in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position, negotiating strategy of the public body, which requires discussion and consultation with legal counsel pursuant to 2.2-3711A, subsection 8, during which all recording of the meeting will stop. Once we take a vote, I will ask all those who are not part of this discussion to leave the room. All those in favor must signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. I would ask that the recording be ceased